Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Scientists in Action, the demise of the dinosaurs and the expansion of mammals. My name is Amanda. I am one of the educator performers here at Denver Museum of Nature and Science. I am standing here with two paleontologists. And before I turn the program over to them, we're just going to do a few quick housekeeping items. If you are one of our on-camera schools, super awesome. Thanks for doing that for us. We're going to ask that you keep your mic muted until we're ready for student questions. When we do prompt you, which I will, I promise, we're going to have you turn on your camera, unmute your mic. And when you ask those questions, come right up to the camera, state your name nice and loud and that question really clearly so that my friends here can get that question answered for you. If you are not one of our camera schools, that's okay too. Thanks for joining us. I will be monitoring this tablet all program long. You are free to just type those questions into the chat as they pop into your head, and I will do my best to get those questions out to our paleontologists so they can also get those questions answered for you. So without further ado, let's get this program started. So we are standing here in the oversized prep lab because things are oversized in here, the fossils specifically. I'm standing here with two of our paleontologists. This is Dr. Jake Wilson and Dr. Gussie Maccracken. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but like I said, they're both paleontologists. And sometimes when we hear the word paleontology, our brains go right to dinosaurs. And that's not wrong. It's not. What we're focusing on in here today is actually the time, that first million years after the dinosaurs. Now, both of these scientists, both of these paleontologists specialize in very specific areas of paleontology. So what I'm going to have them do is go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What's your specialty? Go for it.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Gussie Maccracken. I am curator of paleobotany here at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So what does that mean? I am in charge of about 100,000 fossil plant specimens. And as a researcher and a scientist who studies fossil plants, what I look for are fossil leaves, fruits, flowers, seeds, and then also I think about what kinds of animals might have been eating those plants. And because fossils are in the rock, I also get to think about the geology of a fossil deposit. So kind of doing a lot of roles, but they're all centered around those beautiful fossil plants.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jake. So I am a researcher here at the museum, and I actually specialize in freshwater fish. So a lot of the trout and the bass and the catfish that we have around us today were actually there 66 million years ago when the dinosaurs went extinct. And those are the types of animals that I study. I also study a lot of the timing of events that happened in deep time. So I think about how we can use different sources of information to structure how we think about events that happened way, way back in Earth history.
Very cool. So I lost my train of thought because my brain is falling out on this fabulous Thursday. Why don't we start here? There's going to be a poll that pops up on your screen. We want to know what you guys know. So let's start here. During the KT extinction, non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. This is the end of which geologic period? The Cambrian, the Permian, the Triassic, the Jurassic, Cretaceous, or Pleistocene? Go ahead and vote. We'll give you a few seconds, 30 seconds to get those votes in, and we'll see what pops up. We really do need a whole music. Coming up on time's up. I don't know that for sure because I don't actually have a timer. Oh, look at that. 100% of our participants say Jurassic. What do you guys got for us?
Well, actually, the end of the age of dinosaurs is the end of the Cretaceous. So we call this time period the KT, or now we refer to it as the KPG, The K stands for Cretaceous because there's another interval of time that starts with the C, the Cambrian. So we just switched it to K. And then the T stands for Tertiary. But now we call it the KPG, which means Cretaceous Paleogene mass extinction event. And that's the time when an asteroid slams into the Gulf of Mexico, kills off all of the dinosaurs, or the non-avian dinosaurs, I should say. And we see the shift from the age of dinosaurs into the age of mammals. And we, as humans, are mammals. So this is really the beginning of when our lineages are sort of coming into play and becoming major players in Earth's ecosystems.
Gussie, when we say non-avian dinosaurs, what does that mean?
Good question. So birds are dinosaurs. Birds are technically dinosaurs. So we do have dinosaurs alive today. But usually when we're just kind of referring to the extinction of dinosaurs, we mean everything but the birds. And that's why we say non-avian dinosaurs.
So like when we're eating chicken wings, we're technically eating dinosaurs.
Yes.
So
What about dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets? You're eating dinosaur-shaped dinosaurs.
what? That's crazy. So there's all you can eat chicken wing nights. It's basically all you can eat dinosaurs.
Thanksgiving is a totally new holiday if you focus on turkeys being dinosaurs.
I feel like that's a real missed opportunity amongst restaurants. All right. So we talked about how the dinosaurs are now extinct. These objects that we have here on the table are actually from those first million years after the dinosaurs. And these were actually found in Colorado at a place called Corral Bluffs. Do either of you want to touch on why that site is so fascinating and why that site is so important in paleontology?
Yeah, so at least from the animal side of things, Corral Bluffs is really interesting because when the dinosaurs were around, they kind of dominated the landscape because they were these great big things. They ate all the plants. You had T-Rex running around eating all the animals. So there weren't a lot of opportunities for other types of animals to have fulfilled lives. But after the dinosaurs went extinct, those opportunities opened up. And at Corral Bluffs, because we have these first million years after the dinosaurs went extinct, we can find a lot of stories of the recovery from the extinction in a world where there were no longer dinosaurs. So here in front of me on the table, we have 3 different types of animals that were found at Corral Bluffs. So we'll start up here with this one right here. So this is Palladabena, and Palladabena is a turtle that would have been living in fresh water right after the dinosaurs went extinct. Now, Palladabena's story is interesting because these turtles that lived in fresh water actually didn't have much of a hard time when the giant asteroid struck Mexico. When the dinosaurs were on land going extinct, these guys were just hanging out. Now, in the water with them were another set of freshwater animals, which are relatives of the alligators and crocodiles that we have alive today. So again, this is a freshwater creature from Corral Bluffs, and it may look to you very much like a crocodile or an alligator. You can see its eyes are right here, and then its nose is going to be up here. And on the underside, we have some of those big teeth. Now, as with the turtles, these animals that were living in fresh water, these crocodiles and alligators, they also didn't have much of a hard time when the dinosaurs went extinct because they were hanging out in the water. On land, before the dinosaurs went extinct, all of our ancestors, the mammals, were very small. And the extinction of the dinosaurs opened up huge opportunities for them. And up here, I have an animal. It wouldn't be one of our direct ancestors, but it was probably pretty closely related. So this is an animal called Taeniolabus. You can see its eyes would have been around right here. And then if we flip it over, we can see some big teeth on the bottom. And it would have been using these teeth to eat some plants that Gussie is going to talk about in a minute or two here. Now, this animal, Labus, is interesting because it's one of these mammals that went from being rat size through this thing, which was about the size of a beaver, and then through something that would be about the size of a sheep. And that all happened in about 1 million years after the dinosaurs went extinct. Now, Corral Bluffs is a really fun place to work because the fossils are preserved in a really unique way. All of these were found in these things that we call concretions. Now, if you were out in the field, and the first time that I was out in the field and I saw a concretion, it just looks like a rock. Now, when we find these in the field, we pick them up, and you can see this is a picture of one of our curators out in the field holding a concretion in one hand. And he's about to do what we do with all of these when we find them, which is he's going to break it open with the hammer. Now, when you break it open, you look at the cross-section and you judge to see if there's bone or not. So in this image that we're showing you right now, there's actually clear bone in both halves of that broken concretion. Once we know that there's bone in there, then we can take them back to the lab. And we have a short video here of actually one of the specimens that I have in front of me. So there's the concretion. And as we peel away all of those rock layers, you can actually see the beautiful specimen that is preserved inside. And that specimen is this one that I have in front of me right here. But the animal story is not the only thing that we have in Corral Bluffs. And of course, it's only half of the biological story. And so Gussie, our expert on plants, is going to tell you a little bit about the amazing plant stories that we can tell out of Corral Bluffs.
Thank you, Jake. I should say Dr. Jake. So the paleobotany at Corral Bluffs is really exciting because these plants cover the end of the age of dinosaurs. So we're looking at leaves that grew in forests where dinosaurs were walking around like triceratops and eating these leaves and these plants. And then we also get plants from that first 1 million years after the extinction of the dinosaurs and during the evolution of modern mammals. And so my job is to really kind of fill in the blanks in reconstructing ancient ecosystems and think about what the forests and the landscapes looked like that all of these animals were living in. So I just want to show you really quick some of the beautiful fossils that I brought today. This is a really quite large fossil leaf from the Cretaceous. So this is a dinosaur-aged leaf. And it's quite long, and it looks kind of like tropical plants that you would see today growing near the Earth's equator. And so if you find leaves like this, you can actually hypothesize that the climate was different than it is today. So today in Colorado, it's very cold for much of the year, and it's very dry. But this leaf tells me that 67 million years ago in Colorado, it was probably much warmer and much wetter. This is actually a really fun image of what we think Corral Bluffs looked like 65 million years ago. And one of the other interesting things that you can see on this leaf, and one of the things that I study in particular, are holes that insects have chewed in the leaf. So if you go into your gardens today, or you take a look at leaves as you walk around your neighborhood, pay attention to the damage that insects make, because we can actually see that damage way back in the fossil record, even for things that are 67 million years old. Now, the other two fossil plants I have are from the age of the mammals. So this is the ecosystem that took over after the dinosaurs go extinct. And right here I have what is actually a fossil lily pad. So if you've ever seen lily pads that are floating on the surface of a pond today, we knew that they grew 65 million years ago. And we also brought in this gorgeous but kind of bizarre looking fossil. This is a fossil bean pod. So what you can see here, you can even see the little seeds inside of that bean pod. If you've had hummus lately, or if you've eaten peas or edamame, you've eaten this fossil's relative. And this is the oldest one known from anywhere on Earth that was found in our backyard here in Colorado. And again, it's about 65.5 million years old. So next time you're eating some sort of bean, some sort of legume, remember that the fossil record for these actually is really, really, really old. And these are what our first some of our first mammal ancestors might have been eating.
I don't know. I mean, do you think? Nope, never mind. My brain turned into a 5-year-old. I was going to ask if these animals passed gas because they were eating their beans.
Definitely.
Yes. All right. All right. I think that might actually be a good segue into questions from the kids. How are we feeling?
Sounds great.
You prepared?
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, here we go. Don't forget to type those questions into the chat right here. I have one school on camera. I'm going to pop off for a second. I've got Clara H. Carlson. You are one of our on-camera schools. Go ahead and unmute your mic. Turn on your camera. Kids, remember, walk right up to that camera and state your name and that question nice and loud for us. Clara H. Carlson. That's okay. We'll wait and see if we can work that out. One of the questions was, oh, hey, there you are.
This is Clara H. Carlson. It says we cannot turn on our camera.
That's okay.
So-
That's all right. We can hear you nice and loud right now. Do you want to ask your questions?
Wait, it says now you've asked me to start the video. I'm trying to start the video. Here we go. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Daryl has a question. Daryl, come on down nice and loud.
How many different species of dinosaurs were there?
Ooh, good question.
So that is a tough question to answer because new species are being discovered all the time. So here at the museum, we're one of the biggest museums for going out and doing field work all over the world. And so even this year, we're returning to Bolivia, which is a site that we've been to in the past, where a few years ago, we found the first dinosaur bones to ever be found in that country. And that's happening all over the world. And so because that's happening all over the world, there are also new dinosaur species being named all the time. There are so many that even just this year, I couldn't tell you how many new species have been named. And so now we know that there were tons and tons of species of dinosaurs. And the truth is that there were probably many that we will never actually know about just because their bones were not preserved.
Fantastic. Clara H. Carlson, do you all have another question?
Jeremy, go ahead. One more coming your way.
All right.
So when you talk about the age of mammals, what kind of mammals exactly are you guys talking about?
So we're talking about the mammals that are most closely related to us and the mammals that are kind of around today. Although we're also talking about deeper in time, but after the dinosaurs went extinct, things like mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and some animals that would have been in North America, but no longer are, like some North American camels and North American cheetahs. And so really the last 66 million years has been a time where our lineage, the mammals, things that are closely related to us, have been able to run free around the world because there were not other animals to hold them back, like the dinosaurs. And so when I talk about mammals, it's really all of the things that we see around us today, their relatives and also their ancestors.
Very cool. Jake, how did some of the mammals survive the extinction? Because we talked about how the freshwater fish or freshwater turtles did okay, but how did some of the mammals survive that extinction?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So we think that because the only mammals that survived the extinction, they were very small, so they were probably no bigger than the size of a rat. And small mammals like to live underground, and we think that that's probably where they survived the extinction. And so these were just little burrowing creatures that were living in tunnels or living in their little burrows while things were very hectic up on the surface. And so they were able to use these underground hiding places to survive the extinction.
Very cool. I was wondering, I've been wondering that for a long time, so thank you. Gussie, we've got one coming in for you. How do you know the beans are 1 million years old?
So we know that the beans are actually 65.5 million years old because we can date the rock. We use something that's sort of like, if you've ever heard of carbon dating, it's kind of like carbon dating, but we use other types of elements like argon or uranium lead. And I won't get into the science, but those help us kind of pinpoint how old the rock is around the bean. We can also use just relative geology. So if we know that the extinction layer is here and the beans are just a little bit above that, that means that they're just a little bit younger than the extinction at 66 million years old. So we use a bunch of different kind of context clues to think about how old fossils are.
All right. We have another another class from Clara H. Carlson, Miss Murrell's class. Do you all have questions? You can unmute your mic. Come on up to the camera, state your name and that question nice and loud.
Your name. And hi, my name is Malachi.
Hi, my name is Malachi.
Can you hear us?
We can. Talk a little bit louder, kiddo.
My name is Malachi Johnson. My name is Malachi. My question is, were ants crawling around when the dinosaurs were walking around?
He said we're ants crawling. Did you hear the question? Okay.
We did.
Yeah, that's a really fun question. I really like it. So the answer is yes. Ants were crawling around when the dinosaurs were around. Other types of animals that live in big colonies too, like termites, were probably around. Sometimes we even see their nests fossilized in the ground. So we know that what we call social insects, things like bees and ants and termites, have been around during the age of the dinosaurs.
Good question, Malachi. Very good question. Do you all have another question?
Yes, we do. We have several. So
Perfect.
let me see if I can also start the video. Okay, you can see the class now. Jenna, come up with your question. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jenna. My question for you is, have you ever found the same species more than once?
Great question. So the answer is yes. Oftentimes we can find multiple individuals of the same species in a given site. So I oftentimes find maybe tens to hundreds of the same type of leaf with the really cool early mammals that Jake was talking about. Many times we'll find multiple examples of each one of those. So we have, a few Taeniolabus, and we have lots of the turtle Paldobana, and we have lots of that alligator. And that helps us understand a lot of different kinds of questions, like what were their size ranges? What did they look like when they were little kids versus what did they look like when they were full-grown adults? And so it kind of gives us an idea of the variation that happens in any type of animal, such as if you looked around at your classroom today and, you'd see kids of different heights and, builds and genders. And so finding multiple examples of the same type of species is very, very helpful for paleontologists.
Great question. Do you have another one?
Yes.
Perfect.
My name is Alina, and my question is, what's your heaviest or largest fossil at the museum?
So we have lots of really big fossils. The one that's coming to mind for me right now is that we have a small exhibit going on right now at the museum that's called Teen Rex. And we call it that because it preserves a big fossil of a teenage T-Rex that came from North Dakota. And when they actually found this in the field, the block of rock that had the fossil in it, which is what we pull back to the museum, it weighed 6,000 pounds. And it was also in a remote enough place, a place that was kind of off in the middle of nowhere. And so it was so big that we had to get a helicopter to actually go in and pick the fossil up and fly it to somewhere where we could drop it onto a trailer and drive it back to the museum. Now, out of those 6,000 pounds, at this point now, our preparators in the museum have done amazing work and have removed probably about 4,000 pounds of rock. And so now the fossil doesn't look nearly as big, but whenever we pull these things out of the field, they can be in really, really big, heavy blocks of rock.
Very cool. Gussie, what's the biggest fossil you've ever found?
Oh, the biggest fossil I ever found was a duck-billed dinosaur. I found the skull of this dinosaur and part of its backbone. And it even included pieces of its skin, so the impressions of this dinosaur's skin. And like what Dr. Jake was saying, it was so remote where we found this fossil that we had to fly it out with a helicopter. It wasn't quite 6,000 pounds, but it was probably around 3,500. So it's quite a fun job when you get to dig out a dinosaur and then watch it flying away in a helicopter. It's definitely the first helicopter ride for that dinosaur.
Good for that dino. A lot of people dream of flying in a helicopter. That dinosaur actually did it. We're going to come back to kid questions in just a minute, but I want to know how you all became paleontologists. Like, I know when I was growing up, I didn't even think of becoming a paleontologist. But for those kiddos that are like, whoa, you can actually do this? Like, this could be a job, but they may not know how to get there. So how did you all become a paleontologist?
So about 6 years ago, I was actually studying living animals, and I just happened to run into a curator of dinosaurs from the museum. And like I think many of you, was still interested in dinosaurs, still interested in fossils. And so I just went up and asked this curator how I could become more involved. After that, he invited me out to the fields where I got to dig up a bunch of fossils. I fell in love with it, and then I went and got my PhD. And yeah, so it was a lot of luck.
You know, a lot of paleontologists have similar stories. Mine started as a child. I was really interested in collecting pieces of nature, so rocks and leaves and bugs. I just loved collecting, objects in nature. And then, much like Jake, I was in college, I was studying biology, and I did a little bit of field work with a curator here at the Denver Museum and realized I could be doing this for the rest of my life. I could get paid to go on adventures and travel the world and dig up fossils. And so, again, I went back and got my PhD, became a doctor, and, haven't looked back since.
Very cool. Very cool. So it's not like this straight line, right? Like Gussie, you said you were majoring in biology, which is the study of life, right? Sometimes when we think of biology, it's like present life, right? But you took biology and shifted it towards a degree in paleontology to study prehistoric life. So, y'all, it's an option, right? You just got to figure out how to get there. And there are lots of doorways into that realm. Actually, some of the stuff that was found down in Corral Bluffs was actually found by museum volunteers that kind of broke open the case of the first million years after the dinosaurs. So you can also be an amateur fossil hunter. I know when I go back to my parents' house in Ohio, I walk along the river, and my son and I have found tons of fossils from time periods even older than the dinosaurs. So keep your head down, right? Look towards the ground. Sometimes they say keep your head up, but look towards the ground, my friends. Are we ready for more questions? Okay, let's do this. The other Clara H. Brown, we'll get, let's say, 2 or 3 questions from you all. So go ahead, unmute your mic. Come on up to the camera. State your name and that question nice and loud. We have you. No, we had you on audio
About
at
Mrs.
least.
Corral's class?
There
Are
you
you-
are.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the other class. Sorry.
Now, what is your class name so that I can tell the difference?
Mrs. Morel. Mrs. Morel.
Okay.
Okay.
Mrs. Morel, got it. No.
Hi, my name is Suede, and my question is, my name is Suede, and my question is, what is the rarest fossil you've ever found?
So that is a great question. And it would probably, so out at Corral Bluffs, the things that we often get the most excited about are mammals. But because my background is in fish, that's what I'm going to tell you about. So Corral Bluffs is neat because we do have all of these skulls of things with legs. So mammals, turtles, and crocodiles. But one of the things that we very, very rarely find is fish. And so probably one of the most exciting fossils that I found was one of these concretions where when we cracked it open, you could see a very, very thin line of bone. And it just happened to be a layer of scales from a fish called an alligator gar. And so alligator gars are actually still around today. And they are these great big fish. They can get up to probably 8 feet long. And they are, and so we have a picture right there of, this is a species that is still alive today next to this guy who looks like he's having a really great time standing next to this dead fish. But he's not nearly as excited as I am about how big these things can get. And these would be very close relatives to this fossil that I found at Corral Bluffs. While they're not rare in other places, for some reason at Corral Bluffs, they are very, very rare fossils.
So I would say one of the rarest things that I've ever found was a piece of a skull of a lizard. But this lizard was the size of a Komodo dragon. So really, really, really large lizard that was running around during the age of the dinosaurs, about 76 million years ago. So the reason I'm saying a lizard instead of a fossil plant is that most of the time I actually find fossil plants that are new to science. No one's ever seen them before. We have thousands of examples of this in my collection that hopefully one day will get described by myself or another paleobotanist. So rarity is kind of a fun question because it can be something like a giant lizard, or it can be the many, many, many things in my collection.
All right, let's get one more question from Ms. Morel's class. Can't hear you, kiddo. Go ahead, say your name nice and loud.
Hi, my name is Valerie. My question is, are there any fossils found underwater?
Are there any fossils that are underwater? Is that what you were saying? Is that what you were asking, kiddo? I think so. It says, are there any fossils found underwater?
Yeah, there are really cool fossils that are found underwater. The first one that jumps to my mind are the teeth of Megalodon. So the largest fish, the largest shark to have ever lived. And its teeth are about this big. And so today, in order to find Megalodon teeth, a lot of people go scuba diving in rivers and off the shores of some of the southern states like Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. So there's quite a big fossil trade of Megalodon teeth that were pulled out of the water.
I mean, Jake, you study fish, so.
I do, yeah. So most of the fish that I study, even though they lived in the water, we actually find them in rocks on land. And so, and that's really true of a lot of fossils all over the world, is that we find them once they have, even if it was a tropical environment or a river environment or something, we usually find them in places that are now dry, that are deserts, that pretty much places where there aren't that many plants that can cover them up. And so while all of the fossils that I study lived under the water, none of the fossils that I study are still under the water.
They're a little dried out, huh?
Yep, completely.
We've got a question coming in. They want to know, have you ever found a mosasaurus?
I wish.
You
I have
wish?
not, but I want to.
So I, a couple months ago, I had the opportunity to go down to Peru, where there's been quite a lot of paleontology in Peru, but usually it's from a period of about 20 to 5 million years ago. And we were interested in rocks that were more than 60 million years ago. So we were again interested in rocks from around the time when the dinosaurs went extinct. And we went down there thinking that we were going to find some some land ecosystems where you had dinosaurs and kind of the familiar characters that we're used to. But we actually ended up finding a bunch of marine rocks, including many, many teeth from mosasaurs, some marine turtles, some bits that were probably parts of fish. And so I have found mosasaurs, but I think for both of us, we usually study fossils that came from more of a terrestrial environment rather than a marine one, which is where mosasaurs would have lived.
Cool. So these schools, a lot of them are from New York. I know we find a lot of dinosaurs here, right? Where I grew up, we never found a dinosaur, only the really old stuff. What about New York? Have you ever gone and done any field work in New York, or familiar with anything that you might be able to find in New York?
Well, this is kind of obscure, but there's this ancient sea critter, kind of think of it as a sea bug almost, called a eurypterid. And they sort of look like scorpions. Some people call them sea scorpions. And most of the time they're somewhere around here, that long. Maybe they get there. But the eurypterids that you have in your home state of New York can get up and over 6 feet tall. So that's taller than Dr. Jake.
Did you guys hear that? That's wild.
It's a big
You
bug.
should definitely, I mean, that's a pretty cool thing. That might be a really good picture for you all to look up after this program, because eurypterids are really interesting looking water critters, water arthropods.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, totally. I want to come back to these objects here. So how can we tell the relationship between the two, like how they interacted together, as far as maybe we can tell what they ate or how they lived? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the main things that we use with the animals is we look at their teeth. So if we look at, this is a creature called Borealozuchus. Now, Borealozuchus is again a crocodile, and it had in the back here, let's see if we can show one of the teeth. It's kind of hard to see, but right here, these guys have these little tiny, we call them button teeth. Now, these are not big sharp ones like you have up here in the front. These are smaller and flat teeth. And so what we think that means is that this creature was eating something where it had to crush it. So instead of needing something where it had to kind of cut into it or pierce it or like catching fish or anything like that, it was actually crunching down on things, maybe some shelled organisms that were living in the water with it. And so that's usually what we look at as the teeth. And then an even more interesting one is Taeniolabus up here. So if I flip this guy over, we have in the back these big flat teeth. And I think I mentioned a little earlier that we actually think that it was using these big flat teeth to crush up some of these beans that Gussie showed us a little bit ago. And so those are the main sources of information that we use to think about what different animals were eating.
Yeah, and as a paleobotanist, I also look at the damage that herbivores made on the plants. And most of this is insect damage. So think about things like beetles and grasshoppers and caterpillars that are crawling around on leaves and eating little bites out of them. And so I look at leaves like this one and look for these holes that have been chewed by insects.
Okay. How the heck did insects survive the extinction? Was it kind of the same thought process as far as mammals go? They were able to kind of hang out underground?
Exactly. And insects are the most diverse and abundant creatures on Earth today, and that's probably true of the past. And so insects were the most diverse things in Cretaceous forests. Way more diverse than the dinosaurs. And so because they're so abundant, many of them, just based on your probability of survival, many insects make it through the KPG, especially the ones that can go underground, that can kind of lay low, maybe that are eggs for a long time. But yeah, we know that insects did go through a pretty steep extinction at the KPG, but they came back really quick.
Very cool. One of our schools had to run to lunch. So thanks all for joining us from CHC. The rest of you are going to wrap this up really quickly. So maybe you struck a nerve in some kids today and you inspired them to really want to go into paleontology or paleobotany. What advice do you have for those kids out there that you can give them?
So I would say the number one thing is to keep on being curious about the world around you. So I think for every paleontologist that I know, even if we weren't, when we were young, even if we didn't know the name of every species of dinosaur, all of us were interested in nature. We were interested in asking why things happened in nature. And that's exactly what our job is now. So I think the number one thing is to just remain curious.
And you don't have to be a professional paleontologist like we are. You can be a paleontologist just because you love fossils and you love learning about fossils and you're just interested in maybe even finding them. That makes you a paleontologist. And if you want to continue with it through school, I would just say, keep learning. Our jobs are really fun because our jobs are basically to continue to learn about nature in deep time in the ancient past.
Very cool. It's a lifelong process. Learning is a lifelong thing. So that sounds accurate. Stay curious. And I'm sure that there's probably a bunch of amateur paleontology organizations in your area. So go ahead, get on that computer and see what's in your area. If we didn't get a chance to answer your questions, this is a great time to find time in the day and do your own research and try and find those answers to those questions. And with that, it is time for us to wrap this up. Thank you all so much for joining us. Probably moving towards summer break for a lot of you guys. So have a great summer. And thanks again for joining us. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.